We are now live on Facebook. The event will begin in a few minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Liz Krueger. I'm the state senator from the 28th district. And most of you may know that I'm your state senator, and many of you may not be my constituents. And it doesn't matter, because this information is so important for us to get out to anyone and everyone, particularly if they are now dealing with being a caretaker for someone else or are expecting to be one in the future. I will tell you that that was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my own life, being a part of a family system caring for both parents at the end of their life. So I have enormous empathy for people who work in this field and for all of us out there who have experienced this or need to get better skills to be better caretakers. I want to remind everybody, as usual, that if you're on Zoom or Facebook, you are listening to a seminar on caring for caregivers. And as always, we have closed captioning available for today's event. As a viewer, you have to activate closed captioning. If you're on Zoom, click on live transcript in the meeting controls to start viewing closed captioning. If you're on Facebook Live, you will see a setting button at the bottom right-hand corner of the video. Click on CC for closed captioning to activate the process. And in fact, even if you have any hearing limits at all, CC, closed captioning, can be very valuable to get a clearer understanding. This forum is being recorded, and everyone who's RSVP'd will receive an email with links to all 3 recordings of the virtual senior resource fair sessions and the resources that are posted in the chat, along with the presenters' PowerPoints within a week of our last session, which will be tomorrow's session. Again, if you want to take notes with a pencil and paper, fine, but almost everything said or presented today or put up in the chat detail box on the right, usually on the right, will be made available to you afterwards. So don't worry that you don't think you're a speed writer. Before we start the program, I want to give a little COVID update. As I'm sure you've all heard by now, we're experiencing a new COVID-19 wave. And even though the illness doesn't seem to be as severe as previous waves, it is causing the number of coronavirus infections and hospitalizations to increase. To help avoid contracting COVID, You may want to take precautionary measures, such as wearing a mask in public indoor locations and around large groups of people. This is an important time to get vaccinated against COVID-19, the flu, and if you're over 60 years old, RSV. You can get vaccinated at a participating pharmacy, doctor's office, health centers, and we'll be listing ways to find those on the chat. There's 3 kinds of COVID-19 that have all been approved by the FDA and CDC. Those are Moderna, Novavax, and Pfizer. There's no data at this point of time that says one version of the vaccine is better than the other. But I do want to remind people, even though you think, oh, I did that already, Liz, I got my vaccine, I got boosted. There's a new version of the there's a new version of COVID-19, the disease, and this is a new version of COVID-19 vaccine to address that. So even if you think, done that, been there, you want to go again and get the new vaccine. And of course, always get the flu shot every year around this time of year. So starting with today's event, this is day 2 of a 3-part senior resource fair virtually. Some of you remember I used to do these in person. We sometimes would have 800 people on the bottom floor of Temple Emmanuel, walking around different tables, talking to different groups, learning information, collecting information. I love that model. We were hoping we could get back to it this year, but we can't because it's not smart or safe for that many of us, particularly over a certain age, to all be together in one room. So this is day 2 on caregivers resources, and tomorrow we'll be discussing nature and the environment and why those are important to us even towards the end of our lives. Many of you who are viewing this event today are caregivers. Caregiving is a tough job that can impact your own health and well-being. Our presenters will provide information that will give you an overview of caregiving burdens and provide resources to support you and your loved one. I want to thank Robin Strachan from Search and Care for partnering with my staff and helping to develop today's event. I want to thank, as always, my own staff who are phenomenal at doing the research, helping our constituents, and putting together these great activities, led by Wendy Brennan on these programs. Our first speaker is Elizabeth Fine, who's a social worker at Mount Sinai's Division of Geriatric Psychiatry and the Executive Director of the Early Alzheimer's Foundation. Elizabeth will present on the impact of caregiving on your own physical and mental health. After Elizabeth, Laura Randensky, the Executive Director of COMHE Home Care, will speak about home care and its financial impacts. Following Laura, Dante Tipiani, a dementia care social worker at the Caring Kind, will share information about resources at the agency for caregivers and their loved ones with dementia. Next up, we'll hear from Mark Serbian, an assisted technology advisor at the Marlene Myerson JCC. We all know that advances in tech are helping the way we communicate and live, but many are unaware how advances can support caregivers, older adults, and people with disabilities. And after Mark, we'll hear from Kate Dunn from Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church, who will talk about how faith institutions can support caregivers and create a sense of community. Finally, our last speakers are Robin Strachan, the volunteer coordinator for Search and Care, and Rebecca McManus, the Mary Yaharis Senior Managing Educator of Accessibility at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, who will share activities that caregivers can participate in with their loved ones. After the presentation, I'll come back. Everybody's going to introduce themselves after they present. And after everybody's presented, I'll come back on and we'll moderate a Q&A portion of today's events. So it's my pleasure to introduce my first speaker, Elizabeth Fine. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello, thank you, Senator Krueger. Thank you for inviting me here today. Thanks for letting me share my PowerPoint with you first. So I'm going to do that right now. All righty. So welcome everybody. As you learned, I am a social worker and psychotherapist at Mount Sinai School of Medicine, and I run a program called the Memory Tree, which I'm going to talk to you about a little bit later. What I think is the most important thing to keep in mind, that as I have worked over the years with thousands of caregivers, the role that you take on as a caregiver is a special one. At times, it can be extremely rewarding, taking on this responsibility, but also extremely challenging. What's important to keep in mind always is that you are not alone. The fact that you're here, you want to learn services and resources is why we want to be able to be there for you. But looking around to friends and family and letting them help you too is really important. The AARP says that there are 2.2 million family caregivers in New York State alone. So clearly, this is something that each family is going to be affected by at one point in their life. What's important to keep in mind, though, that there are so many different changes that you deal with as a caregiver. One is these role changes, meaning that caregivers can be anyone. It can be a child taking care of an adult. It can be a person taking care of their sibling. It can be a spouse or a significant other caring for someone else and taking on new responsibilities. It can be a friend who's looking out for someone dear and close to them who knows they need the help. But it's also important to keep in mind that some of you here might not be in New York City. You might be long distance caregivers. And for you to know the support and resources around that are available to you is really important. So keeping in mind all these changing roles you're dealing with, but also noting the emotional aspects of caregiving. And I think what's most important to know is that it's a myriad of emotions that can bombard you day in and day out. One might be joyful, loving, happy memories you're sharing with that person, but also turn to things like frustration and stress in terms of having to try and navigate the systems that hopefully we're going to be able to help you do better today. The physical aspects of caregiving are insurmountable at times, not only for you, the caregiver, possibly needing to now do hands-on care to the person you're concerned about, but also keeping in mind your own physical wellness and health and how that can be compromised as you take care of somebody else. The financial aspect and burden of caregiving is also really important to note, and knowing the resources that are around, the financial assistance that is around, just realizing that things are expensive. Traveling in New York City to get your family member or friend to the doctor can be extremely expensive. So knowing about services and programs like Access to Ride and things like that to help you navigate that easier and not put a burden on you. Often caregivers have to give up time from work to take care of their family members, and that also can add to the financial stress within your family, but also within the family you're caring for. So while I've listed a variety of different caregiving emotional responses, you might not have all of them. You might only find one of them is something you're dealing with yourself, but keep in mind, this is the variety of different things that you might be challenged with. I want to spend a couple of minutes and talk about two in particular. Depression. Now, unfortunately, having a role of being a caregiver can be consuming, and often being able to identify in yourself what you're dealing with is really important. If you're noticing that you're feeling more sad or maybe irritable, short-tempered with people that you care that are close to you, that's not normally how you act. That's probably a sign that something is changing in you and you're feeling more of a burden. The loss of interest in things that you once enjoyed can also happen. Maybe your energy might be low because your sleep might be compromised and you're not feeling able to do the things you used to. Feelings of worthlessness, even thoughts of harming yourself are possibilities that can happen to you as a caregiver. But I want you to remember what I said, that you are not alone. It's important to be able to reach out to people, even the healthcare providers you work with, to get support and guidance. keeping in mind not only the things I've mentioned, but that appetite, weight gain, weight loss can also be a symptom and sign of a depression. Even concentration, ability to manage and care for things and follow through on things is really important to do, and that might be compromised. So if you notice in yourself 2 or more of these symptoms of a depression that might be happening for more than 2 weeks, I would say it's important to reach out to a healthcare provider to get some help. And I'll talk about where to do that in a minute. The other really important thing to keep in mind is that stress is another thing that often caregivers experience at different times in their caregiving role. Now, while stress is a normal, healthy thing, the fight or flight response is important. There's usually an escalation in your heart rate, your heart starts pounding, your breath becomes short, hormones are released. But after the stressful event happens, you go back to a calm, normal baseline. The problem with caregiving responsibilities is that it can be a chronic, constant, stressful situation. And that's not healthy for you emotionally or physically. It can affect your cardiovascular system, your gastrointestinal system. It can suppress your immune system. So if you're saying, why am I getting more coughs or flus? This might be because the stress is wearing down on your metabolism. So noting that is important, together with the fact that stress might even affect your memory and cognition, together with even the depression I mentioned. So it's important to talk to your healthcare provider, whether it's your primary care doctor, or whether it's calling one of the psychiatry departments at one of the hospitals in the city. Mine is Mount Sinai. We have a special geriatric psychiatry department. We have social workers like myself to provide individual therapy, group therapy, and we have psychiatrists on staff, as do all medical centers in the city, to be able to get medication management and support. It's also really important, the 988 crisis line, which is there for you within a minute. It's amazing. You're able to talk to someone who's there to support and help you through your crisis, through providing resources and important referrals to you to help you get the help you need. So remembering you're not alone, but you must reach out for this help because we're here to help you. What's also really important is respite. And for caregivers to know that there are places and programs around that can help provide rest and time for you to recover and regain your time and energy and strength. That's why I started the Memory Tree. It's a non-for-profit I started 17 years ago. And the goal really is for people who are caring for someone who has mild memory problems, a dementia of some sort, or they've had an injury that caused memory problems, or even dealing with severe depression where memory can be impacted. We get together and still on Zoom because of, as we heard from Senator Krueger, the COVID numbers are rising again. Each week I have 7 different programs that run each week on Zoom in English and in Spanish. We get together, we're partnering with organizations around the city, the Manhattan School of Music. Juilliard brings in performers for live concerts for us, discussions with our participants, chair yoga to keep us exercised and help those neural networks in the brain keep active. Our philosophy really is keeping your brain active to use it, not lose it, is really important. So we do the yoga, we're doing theater workshops, we're doing discussion groups with museums around the city, some of which you'll hear from today, that come in and partner and give presentations and workshops to our programs. And so having our participants and their caregivers, if they want, join us to learn about art, share art together, and be able to exercise our brains and our bodies to stay well and healthy in spite of the memory challenges that are going on, is what the Memory Tree is all about. So I hope that you'll reach out to me, and I hope you'll reach out to your primary care doctors for support. But knowing that respite is important for all caregivers, my number is here, our email is there, and our website to connect to. So I thank you for listening, and I look forward to questions later in the presentation. I'd like to take this opportunity now to turn things over to Laura Radensky, who's going to talk about her program and resources for caregivers. Thank you, Laura.
Okay. Thank you. And okay, so I am going to share my screen now. And good afternoon. My name is Laura Rudensky. Again, I'm the Executive Director for Concerned Home Managers for Elderly Home Care, or COME. And I'm going to be speaking today about home care and its financial impact. Accessing home care is very challenging. There's a diverse number of care options, as well as high costs. And this is not a one-time expense, right? This is that, ends this month for the most part. It's something that's going to be ongoing. So it's really important to understand how you can manage with it. We also have a somewhat confusing structure depending upon whether the home care is being provided through Medicare, Medicaid, or private pay. So a lot of times the reason that all of us end up, there's usually two different trajectories. One of them is the hospitalization, right? Where there's a sudden need, either post-hospital or after a rehab visit. And in general, what the first place that we'll look to is Medicare coverage, right, through a certified home health agency. There's been a lot of consolidation of the Medicare home of the certified home health aid agencies in the past, so that there's not as many as there were before, but all of them have similar regulations in that they are short-term, 30 days or less of care. They have a focus on the skilled services, nursing, and the therapies with a small amount of home health aid hours, usually a couple days a week for a few hours. In general, you'll find out about these agencies through the hospital or rehab discharged staff providing lists. And what I've been hearing most often in terms of these services is that there's delays in getting them started, and or that they're saying, oh, we don't feel that you need as much. So I did include a list of links, and one of them is the Medicare Rights Center, which is an excellent resource to have. The other trajectory is really when we see this gradual decrease in functioning due to cognitive and physical declines, where you really need to try to access shorter hours for safety, household chores, and having eyes on the person. So how do we go about getting recommendations of where to go for home care? So keep those lists, even if you don't need it right away. It's if you're getting a list from a hospital or other facility, keep it because you may need it later. Consider looking at agencies that focus on different types of illnesses, such as the Parkinson's Foundation. There's various dementia organizations or cancer care. If it's a more complex situation, you may want to access a geriatric care manager who can help do research and advise you on decisions. The Aging Life Care Association has an excellent website. And for more general information, you can contact the Department for the Aging has given contracts to different agencies throughout the city that provide case management. So you can access information by phone, and they can do home visits as well. And don't forget, always the community-based social workers through local senior centers, housing, and unions can also provide assistance. So, and what happens is that many of us, when we look towards agencies, get sticker shock, right? We're seeing 32 to 42. My agency is 34. So, and understandably, it is a lot of money. And so sometimes instead you're saying, well, the husband of the cousin on the 6th floor recommended someone, but I really urge you to consider agencies for a number of reasons. First of all, understand that the reason that it is so high is that there's a minimum wage just for home care workers, all right? So in general, it's 15, but for home care workers, it's 17. Starting, and that increases to $18.55 as of this January. But agencies really can do the trainings, ensure that aides have certification, as well as doing all of those criminal background checks and screening. Agencies also provide nursing supervision. A nurse will go and in person orient the aide, make sure that there's a good plan of care, and provide 24/7 on-call backup services, backup aides if someone calls out sick, as well as a nurse to be able to answer questions. So some issues to consider when hiring an agency. Get the information. They have to reveal all of the costs. Read through their service agreement. Know if there's a security deposit, if you're expected to give advance notice of termination, and any other additional costs. Two things I want to highlight. When you ask about 24-hour care, there's two different types. There's that, right, 24-hour, every hour of the day where you have two different aides for 12 hours, but there's also live-in services. Not all agencies give it, but again, that's an aide providing all 24 hours of care from like Monday at 8 a.m., for example, until Tuesday at 8 a.m. The thing is, they are sleeping 8 hours of that time, 5 hours of which are supposed to be continuous. So if the person is awaking more than a couple times a night, you will be charged for the 8 hours for the fact that they didn't get that sleep. Also ask, what are the minimum hours per day? It used to be pre-COVID, 4 hours, not a problem. Many agencies say 6 or 8 hours. And you'll also want to find out if they can provide temporary services, if that is what you're looking for, because many agencies can. So one way to pay for these services is long-term care insurance. It is one of the only type of insurance besides Medicaid that covers long-term home care. However, many of us are not fortunate enough to have it because it is voluntary, often with high premiums. But if you do have long-term care, be aware that there often are exclusionary periods. In other words, a period of time, 30 or 60 days, that you have to start using the care and don't get reimbursed. Also very different levels of reimbursement. So it's really important to look at your policy and also to be aware of what qualifies as eligibility. Usually ADL is for activities of daily living. You'll usually need to have 2 or 3 activities of daily living that one cannot do. If you don't have long-term care insurance, again, this is expensive. So you may want to be talking to financial planners regarding reverse mortgages, cashing in on other insurances, etc. Respite care for those who are just above the Medicaid level may be helpful. So New York Foundation has an excellent respite program, and many of the case management programs throughout the city also provide some small amount of care. There's often wait lists, but it is helpful to look into that. And there are respite vouchers with state funding for small amounts of care for dementia. Usually only they're $2,000, which again, to give you an idea, would cover about 60 hours. Accessing Medicaid services. So all Medicaid home care is provided through managed care programs. These are the income levels, and I know people are saying, wow, how is anybody supposed to get by on these? But they did go up by 50% this past January. So this is very different than it was previously. Medicaid applications are complicated, so it's best to have guidance. One complication, but it's a helpful one, is that there are the possibility, even if your income is above these levels, to do a pooled trust. And I'm not, again, on the links, you can look into more information, but a pooled trust is a way, even if you get more income per month, to be able to pay that into a nonprofit agency and then have some of your bills paid. Also, remember, with Medicaid, the consumer directed program allows you, if you're overseeing the aid, to be able to hire someone you know, a friend or family member or others. But again, if it's a complicated financial situation, you're going to want to have a lawyer assisting. There are also some agencies that specialize in the Medicaid application. And if it is a simple one, the DFTA, the Department for the Aging case management agencies may be able to help. If you're doing a pooled trust, those agencies also can assist with doing the Medicaid application. And then in terms of advocacy, so New York Medicaid Choice is the one that processes the applications for cases needing more than 12 hours. There are additional assessments. Many people are only receiving 5 to 8 hours a day. Keep in mind that there's a long process often to start, a Medicaid that usually starts the first of the next month. So if you're starting, for example, today, you can most often count on not December 1st, but January 1st, because it does take a while for those assessments. but these are also a list of other ways to advocate. So, and this is my contact information. I know this is a lot of info. I'm more than happy to answer questions. And now I am going to hand it over to Dante Tipiani from Caring Kind. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Senator Krueger, for hosting this event. My name is Dante Tipiani. I'm a dementia care social worker at Caring Kind. I'm often asked, what is Caring Kind? Who is Caring Kind? And for those that are new to being a caregiver or a care partner, Caring Kind is one of the oldest not-for-profit organizations in New York. We focus on providing care, support for family members, and for people and their family members, and also for professionals affected by dementia, by any type of dementia. We were founded about more than 40 years ago, and in 2015, the name changed. Our name changed from the Alzheimer's Association, the New York City chapter, to Caring Kind. In the next few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about the services and the programs that we have. So while we wait for a cure for this neurocognitive disorder, which we call dementia, we believe the best thing that we can do right now is to provide care and kind for those people who are affected by dementia and their families. We do this through a host of programs, services, and educational opportunities. People with Alzheimer's or any type of dementia. We also have programs and services for family members, for partners, for friends, anybody who is providing care or support for someone with dementia. We have educational programs for healthcare professionals, for home health aides, companion, direct care workers. I'm going to start with one of the first programs, and we delivered this through different avenues, whether it's virtual or in person or a combination. First is our one-to-one sessions that we can meet with someone over the phone, on Zoom, or in person. Oftentimes, we also have some satellite sites in Brooklyn and in the Bronx where we can meet people where they're at. We have small group programs. We have education, seminars, webinars, trainings, and special events. All of these services are free. We have them available in English, in Spanish, and in Chinese. I'm going to start with the early stage program. As you can see, we have a host of different programs. First, our cognitive stimulation therapy program. This is an evidence-based program. I'm going to jump a little bit more into details about this specific program in the next slide. But basically, it's 16 sessions throughout the course of about 2 months. And then for those people who are really interested and really want to continue to participate in these groups, we have what we call a maintenance group that is for 6 additional months. We have a program called Journey Together. Journey Together is an early stage workshop for family members, for care partners who want to learn more about the ABCs of what dementia is, how to plan the legal, the financial aspects of taking care of someone with dementia. And also these groups are supportive. So these are 10 sessions long, and they are with the person with dementia also. We also have a program called MAP, where we pair people with volunteer mentors who are newly diagnosed. A program that we have also is To Whom I May Concern, which is a writer's workshop for people in the early stage of dementia to write a letter to whom I may concern and share that story to family and friends. Make It Matter, a stakeholders engagement training, and Life Pathway, which is living independently for those who don't have nobody, who don't have family, friends. And we try to identify like a roadmap for them. Cognitive stimulation therapy. So this therapy is the hallmark of one of the programs that we provide for people who are living with early stage dementia. Stimulates the mind through language, generating new thoughts, new ideas, improving cognition and mood over time. We start the program again, either virtually or in person, goes through a course of meeting twice a week for an hour for 2 months. And we've noticed that there's been engagement. There's the person's mood improves over this time and their quality of life. And these groups are available in English and in Spanish, virtually or in person. And we really do have small groups. They range anywhere from 4 to 6 people within each session. Now, family members, care partners, friends, anybody who feels that they need more information about dementia in general, or are taking care of someone with dementia, can call our helpline to get information about dementia, about caregiving, resources, referrals, or have a consultation where we could just sit down with the person, again, virtually, over the phone or in person, and just talk about their needs, come up with a plan of care, and try to identify those resources that they can benefit from in the community. Educational workshops. We have a program called Partnering Together, a workshop, a combination of psychoeducative and supportive. We have support groups, various types of support groups throughout New York City, whether they are in person or virtual. We have one-to-one coaching, and this one-to-one coaching is social work led, and it includes an evidence-based program called REACH. And this specific program is specifically for those families who are going through challenges when taking care of someone with any type of dementia. Oftentimes, some of those challenges can be behavior challenges, like refusing to bathe, or delusions or paranoid thinking. So we go through this program over the course of 6 months, and we meet with them individually or virtually again. We have a Connect to Culture engagement opportunity where we partner with the community, and we try to bring an alternative. I sometimes think about this program as alternative medicine, because we provide this program for family members and for people with dementia, and they could come to where we're at, or we partner with the community. We have a medical alert program for people who wander safety programs in New York City, and where we work with the New York City Police Department, where people with dementia and their family can receive a bracelet in case the person wanders and gets lost. Workforce development, education, consultation, and these programs are for professionals. We teach home health aides. We provide education about dementia, coaching, consultation, and we provide this in residential settings like nursing homes or assisted living facilities. Before I finish, I wanted to briefly just talk to you about some of the engagement programs I touched base on before, which is one is Connect to Culture, but also Connect to Baseball, because this one is for people who have cognitive problems like dementia or Alzheimer's. and are interested in baseball. So we have a baseball reminiscence program where we meet with them on Zoom or in person, and we talk about baseball. We have a 360 meetup also for while we have virtual settings and people know each other virtually, then we have a time where we could all meet in person in a safe place. If you're interested in any of these programs, there's different ways to reach out to us. You can fill out the web form, downloadable PDF. You could send us an email, a fax, give us a call at our helpline at 646-744-2900. Now I'm going to turn over the floor to Mark. Mark, take it over.
Thank you, Dante. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Senator Krueger and your staff. I really appreciate the invite. Let me share my screen. 1 second. There we go. I represent AT Help, which is AT Help is a organization over at the Marlene Myerson JCC here in Manhattan. And what we do is we help all individuals with disabilities for free to determine if assistive technologies might benefit them. We don't obtain the technologies for you, but we teach you about the technologies and help you determine what might be useful. What I want to do is this handout will actually be available at the end of the presentation online with Senator Krueger's office, and you can look at it. So I'm going to fly through these slides really quickly. But basically, assistive tech is a huge field that covers so many different parts of a person's life. From assistive tech supports that support daily living activities, things that actually help you in and out of a car, or a person. I'm actually a caregiver myself for my mother-in-law, and having her use one of these seat lifts to get up out of a chair so that can help her move and pivot. To adaptions for leisure activities, where a person can get back to a lot of the things they want to do in life. After Vietnam War, a lot of soldiers wanted to get back to fishing. A lot of people had limbs that didn't function the way they did before. So we had adapted fishing rods, believe it or not. We can adapt just about anything that's out there. And there were a lot of low-tech solutions out there. A person could use a tool to turn a key in a lock, or a tool to be able to open a water bottle, simple things for people with arthritis or any type of hand challenges. We have tools out there that help people with safety. And this one is really amazing. My sister has multiple sclerosis and she was stuck on the floor and unable to get up. I wish I had had this chair in the top right hand corner, which actually shows that you can slide it underneath the person and then actually crank it up and help the person to a sitting position so you can move them if you can't lift them yourselves. There's so many tools out there to help people with daily care. But we also get very complex tools. Some people have lost the ability to communicate effectively. So on the left, we have a complex communication device. On the right, we have an app on your phone that can help a person say phrases when they're not able to because they've had a stroke or something else that's taken away their ability to communicate. We have tools that are even more complex than that, like eye tracking tools for a person, say, with ALS, who's unable to communicate. We can actually set it up so that they can control a computer with their eyes. Or, as Stephen Hawking did in the middle picture, used a switch for his cheek to be able to move his cheek and control an entire computer. We even have head tracking built into your phones and iPads now, so a person can move their head and actually communicate on a device or run the device. We have a lot of other high-tech devices like this OrCam reader that could read any medicine bottle or anything that's underneath its aim, or an app that's free on your phone called Seeing AI, which you could just wave your phone over any item, it will be read to you if you can't see it or you're having trouble reading. We have so many personal emergency systems out there now, and many of them are cellular, so that it's not just a person at home. Now, if my mother-in-law is with her aide and she's out in the community, they did get lost recently, and I luckily had tagged their wheelchair so I could find them, but she could press something and emergency services could find her. There are pill dispensers out there and pill apps out there to help people remember when to take the medicine that they need, or to split it up in ways that, give it to them when they need it so that there aren't, situations of overdosing, which really is more common than people think. There are tools out there that help you get assistance if you don't have caregivers. Like, for example, Be My Eyes is an app that allows people to aim their phone at something, and people on a community see that you're asking a question, and they'll be your eyes and tell you what you're looking at and read it to you or tell you where you are. There are some advanced tools out there now that are a little funny. There are some robots out there, but we've actually had some evidence that robots, just like animals, actually keep people company and make them feel safe, and actually can help them with emergency services and so forth. That's a little over the top, but I just wanted to put it out there so you know they exist. But home automation is not over the top, and home automation is really affordable. I've set up my mother-in-law's apartment so that I can monitor her by my phone and see how she is. All these tools can be put up there. We can have doorbells where you can see a person. I can unlock the door for the aide remotely with my app. It costs about $100 to put this all together with an app that allows me to do this remotely. And Amazon Alexa really is my friend. I use a lot of other tools out there, but with Alexa, I'm actually able to not only check in on her and communicate with her, but also she can ask it preset questions that I've put in there, like, you know, who's my aide on Fridays? And it will tell her because I've put the preset questions in there. Matter of fact, my mother-in-law can't say Alexa, she's Spanish speaking, so she says Amazon. You can change that word too. Pretty funny, that's the word she could use. This is her in bed right now with the aide, and I can actually monitor them and see what's going on in the apartment, check and see if the windows are open, see how the weather is, see if everything's okay. That was a $30 camera that I set up. Also, we have more sophisticated tools out there now too, like this is iGuard Stove, where you actually plug this device into the stove and it will tell you if you've left it on, if somebody's left it on, or the gas. That one of the aides actually did that in my mother-in-law's apartment, so I was actually able to make sure she was okay. There are many tools out there for communication, from simple phones like Jitterbug, and even iPad-like solutions, tablet solutions like GrandPad, where it's very simple that they can touch. Alexa works really well, like I said, for my mother-in-law to touch. And there are also tools out there to help us monitor where a person is. You can use that with a person's phone, and I'll show you that in a second, but they can also wear simple watches like this one, where wherever they are, it sends us a remote of where they are, and if they need any help, they can contact us. Now, your phones, your watches can also do a lot of other things too, like, for example, check your heart rate, check with a basic EKG, and also check your blood oxygen level, as well as check and see if you have fallen. Matter of fact, I tripped the other day and my watch is telling me, Mark, are you okay? Do you need to alert services? It was a little annoying. I felt embarrassed, but it's nice to know that it works in that way. And there are also tools, you know, on all of your phones that you can set up your medical ID so that even though your phone's locked and you can't see on your phone, you know, nobody can see anything on your phone, they can see your medical information if they needed to. Now, with your phone and your tools, you can also track anybody or anything in your community. And there are many ways to do that. So you can track all your stuff, your wallet, your keys, whatever you've lost. You can also find people as well. These are some of the things I can go over with people if they need any assistance with this. But where I want everybody to start is to just look on your devices that you have. Your phones, your iPads, your computers, even your television has assistive technology built into it. And these are the kinds of questions we can answer for you. Start with the accessibilities built into Android, built into Windows, built into Apple, built into Microsoft Office. It actually has tools to help read documents to you. And even built into Alexa and other devices, there are a lot of accessibility features built in. I'm rushing through this really quickly. I just want you to see really quickly on iPhones that people typically have. Go into the accessibility area and you'll find things for vision, for hearing, for memory supports, and even supports for cognitive challenges. Like on the left screen, you can see that the buttons are bigger now, so a person could actually dial or use an app much more easily. And there are a lot of tools for physical assistance. Like my mother had severe arthritis, couldn't operate her phone very well, and there are ways to set it up for that. So there's so many tools out there. I'm not going to have time to go through all of these, that if you need assistance with this, we can help you find what tools you might need or how to use the tools you have. Finally, this is an example of a tool that's built into your browsers on your computers. You can actually simplify text and remove distractions and have it read to you. There's so many apps on your computer that are built in to your browsers and other ones that you can add that really make life a lot easier. But what I really want you to do is be a good consumer. Everybody's going to keep promising the best apps for this and the best apps for that. And I don't want you to fall for that. Make sure you read the reviews of apps. Make sure you ask people like me for some advice on what might be functional, and we'll look at it together. So if you need any help, you can go straight to this website called the Unified Listing, which I'll have posted with this handout. And it has every assistive tech tool on earth. And if you need more advanced help from actually myself, you can contact me at athelp@me.com, and I'll be here for anything you need. It's a totally free service, and we'll support you the best we can. Thank you. Let me introduce Kate Dunn. And thank you, everybody. Kate, please, it's all yours.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Senator Krueger. Faith communities are filled with caregivers caring for loved ones, family members, friends, even other members of the faith community. There are many ways that faith communities can support individual caregivers. First and foremost, faith communities can remind caregivers that they are not alone. Here are some of the common challenges that I see caregivers facing. Caregivers may become intellectually overwhelmed. Perhaps they're trying to navigate a complicated healthcare system. Perhaps they recognize their loved one needs a higher level of care, but don't know how to begin getting more supports in place. Perhaps they're overwhelmed by all the financial implications involved with getting more support for their loved one. Caregivers have a lot to figure out, and often the situations they're dealing with only seem to get more complicated. Caregivers can become emotionally overwhelmed. They see their loved one dealing with difficult circumstances, which often include illness, physical suffering, emotional distress. Bearing witness to another person's struggles day in and day out is so very hard. Caregivers can face their own health challenges, as others have mentioned. The work of caring for their loved ones demands a tremendous amount from them physically, sometimes in terms of stamina, just getting through the day, and sometimes in terms of actual physical labor, such as helping their loved one in and out of chairs or bed, which might cause the caregiver back or shoulder or knee injuries. And it's hard to find time to exercise or cook. Anxiety may interfere with sleep. Caregiving can take a toll on a caregiver's physical and emotional health and well-being. And one of the biggest challenges caregivers face is that they can become socially isolated. As the focus of their attention, time, and energy becomes increasingly centered on caring for their loved one, caregivers may stop attending social events, religious services, and other activities, and find themselves increasingly alone with the person they're caring for. What can faith communities do to support caregivers? They can strive to keep caregivers and their loved ones plugged into the community, reminding them that they're important members of the community, even if they're no longer able to participate the way they used to because of the loved one's illness and the caregiver's responsibilities. This happens in a variety of ways. Clergy regularly reach out to caregivers, checking in with them to see how things are going, giving them a place to vent if they need one, or a space to talk about something else besides caregiving, like other things that are going on in the faith community or the world. Electronic and snail mail communications with newsletters or the weekly bulletins from the congregation keep caregivers and their loved ones abreast of what's happening in their faith communities. Since clergy can't possibly keep up with all the pastoral needs of a congregation, faith communities also enlist lay leaders to offer pastoral care to caregivers and their loved ones, sending cards or making calls and visits depending on the situation. Clergy and lay leaders visit caregivers and their loved ones at home or when they're in the hospital. And during these visits, whether on the phone or in person, clergy will often remind caregivers how important it is that they take care of themselves, of their own physical and emotional and social and spiritual well-being. Faith communities can make it possible, depending on the circumstances, for caregivers and their loved ones to come to services or special events by providing transportation and escorts. Many faith communities have members deliver weekly flowers to their homebound and hospitalized members and caregivers. Technology has made it possible for members to attend worship virtually, even if they're unable to attend in person. And faith communities have become increasingly intentional about inviting people to participate in worship services, whether through live streaming or Zoom, and making sure that their members have the technology to be able to do this if they want to. Faith communities are praying communities. Weekly bulletins often list the names of members who wish to be lifted up in prayer. Some congregations also keep confidential prayer lists that only the pastors know about and pray for. Clergy and members pray with caregivers and their loved ones on the phone and in person. Faith communities also offer online Bible studies or other educational programming that caregivers can participate in. And this is another way to keep caregivers plugged into the community through small groups of caring people from their community who will also check in with them about how they're doing. Faith communities also offer practical support, such as regular meals to homebound members of the community and their caregivers, and also connecting them to social workers who can help the caregivers navigate complex healthcare systems and figure out how to help loved ones stay in their homes or how to access higher levels of care. Faith communities can also provide support for caregivers by taking a shift with their loved ones so the caregiver can get to the dentist or to a physical therapy appointment, or running errands, or going along for a medical appointment to take notes. Caregivers are doing some of the most important work in the world, quietly, behind the scenes, and often with incredible patience and love. The most important thing that faith communities can do is remind caregivers that God and their faith community see them, love them, and are there for them. I want to close with a question. What can caregivers do to access support from their faith communities? The most important thing is to make sure that your faith community knows that you need support. Sometimes people assume that their clergy know more than they know about what's happening in their members' lives. For example, sometimes staff transitions mean that historical memory has been lost. Members who haven't been around in a while may need to remind their community that they're still there. Sometimes people don't want to be a bother. They feel embarrassed about drawing attention to themselves or asking for help. But it is truly okay to be a squeaky wheel with your faith community. Introduce yourself to new clergy or call to check in with a clergy person you haven't spoken to in a while. They will be so glad to hear from you. Your clergy want to know if you would like a phone call or a visit or a prayer or help figuring out a particular challenge you and your loved one are facing. But a faith community can't help a caregiver if the community doesn't know the caregiver needs help. Faith communities and clergy aren't going to be able to solve every problem the caregiver faces, but they will be able to assure the caregiver that they are beloved children of God, valued members of a community, and they don't have to face the challenges they're dealing with alone. Thank you. And I would now like to introduce Robin Strachan from Search and Care.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you, Senator Krueger. And I want to thank the participants who are here today, talking about your responsibilities, which we take very seriously. So I'm talking about shared activities things that you can do together with your loved one. We want you to not feel so isolated. So hopefully these are some opportunities that you don't yet know about that will encourage you to get out. The first of which is something that I call the happiest hour of the year. It's an organization called Vocalies, run by Eva Swan. They perform all over the city at senior centers, at assisted living buildings. This particular picture was taken at the Brick Church, where Search and Care has an annual event with Vocalies. And I know that they're doing a holiday program at the Isaac Center. So look on their website, look at their calendar, and do feel free to come with your loved one to this, because it's just worth it. The next is Concerts in Motion. They do something similar yet very differently. Concerts in Motion, while Vocalies has Broadway performers singing for you, Concerts in Motion has both youth and adult musicians. They play such a variety of instruments. Obviously here you see something that's very culturally interesting. They have people who play guitar or violin or piano, and people who sing.
Robin,
they come in.
pardon
Yes.
me, would you like me to share the PowerPoint for you?
Yes, I thought I was. Thank you. Thank you. Are we up to Concerts in Motion?
Just one moment.
Thank you so much.
We are all set.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm so sorry for my lack of technology, but here's Concerts in Motion, as I was talking about. What's great about them is there's a variety of ways you can access their performances. You can either go to their performances, or if you prefer to have them come to your home, that can be arranged as well. They're used to working with caregivers. It's a wonderful resource. Next slide, please. Thank you. I'm sure most of us who've grown up in the city remember loving the Staten Island Ferry. It is still there. It is still free. It is totally accessible. So on a wonderful day, I suggest you do it. It's very exciting. It'll be nostalgic. You will hear lots of other languages spoken. So there'll be some really interesting stimulation, and how better to see the Statue of Liberty and all that she represents. Next, please. Thank you. So I think we all know that 92nd Street Y is an amazing resource for families of all ages. And of course, their adult program, the Hyman Brown program, really focuses on supporting the older adult. Absolutely. They have a series of supports for families experiencing cognitive losses, both for the caregiver and the person you're caring for. Their contact number is here. There's so much activities going on every day at the Hyman Brown program. So I think not only will you find it a great resource for your needs for this, but other activities as well. Thank you. Next. This is a program on the Upper West Side that is really a jewel. It's called LINK, Lunch, Interaction, Nurturing, and Companionship. From gathering around a table and listening to music, or trying to sing together, or even enjoying a sandwich, or something that I think everybody enjoys, which is companion animals. It's a really great opportunity to be out with your person for several hours at a time and be catered to, because yes, they do serve you lunch. Check it out. It's the National Council of Jewish Women of New York. Next, please. Thank you. Another program from the JCC, and it is on the Upper West Side, which is just like our 92nd Street Y, very, very rich in resources and programming. This is a program originated by their social worker, Judy Margulis, that is dedicated specifically to caregivers and the person they're caring for. You both come to the JCC and you both work separately with a team and then together. It's a really wonderful nurturing program, and you can contact Judy Margolis directly, either by phone or via her email. Next, please. We were just listening to Kate Dunn from Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church. So I just wanted to remind you that our churches are a wonderful resource for a whole host of reasons. Of course, supports, but there's also great events happening all over the city that are most often free that a lot of people don't remember to think about. For example, at the beginning of October, we could have had a fabulous introduction behind the scenes of one of the biggest organs in the whole city. We missed that, but there are probably other opportunities on future church and faith-based bulletins that will be of interest to you. And then lastly, my organization, next slide, please, Search and Care, has another evidence-based program. And what that means is the results of which are detailed and proven to work. It is called Stronger Memory. It comes out of a company in Arlington, Virginia called Goodwin House, who specialize in senior housing and programming. And it is a program that works on that part of the brain that stimulates memory. It's a 12-week program. We do it in small groups. You can either meet in person or you can meet virtually. This might be a good opportunity for you to nurture the person you're caregiving if they're they have mild cognitive issues, or you don't have to be diagnosed. Perhaps you do it yourself. There's 3 exercises you do daily. One of which is simple math, and you time yourself. So as time goes on, you're going to realize how much quicker you are at adding, subtracting, multiplying, etc. And how long has it been since you've actually done that by hand? The second of which is you're instructed to write about a specific topic. If you can't write by hand, you can use computer. And the third is reading aloud. And then all these 3 things together help work on that part of the brain that improves your memory, which is why it's called Stronger Memory. And lastly, I just want to thank, next slide, please, all the caregivers that are participating here and all the different packages you come from. It's not just spouses, it's children taking care of grandparents as well. And now I would like to pass it on to Rebecca McGinnis from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin, and thank you, Senator Krueger. I'm just going to... Okay. So I'd like to talk with you today about programs and initiatives at the Metropolitan Museum of Art for people with dementia and their care partners. We're very interested in serving and working with older adults more generally and caregivers more generally as well, but I'm focusing here on the programs we have for this particular audience, and all of these programs and initiatives really have very similar goals and similar also to those of other presentations you've heard. So really, we want to create meaningful shared experiences with and around works of art that can contribute to a better quality of life for people with dementia and their care partners, provide just fun, enjoyable opportunities that also provide cognitive, physical, and social stimulation. And really the caregiver participation is is an important part of all of these programs. So really with the aim there of reducing that sense of isolation, caregiver burden, the stress, by, just connecting with other people, fostering communication, and a comfortable place to enjoy and learn. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about specific programming that are mentioned here. But in addition to our kind of regularly scheduled programs that happen usually on a monthly basis, we also partner with older adult centers, with assisted living and other residences and other kinds of organizations working with older adults, caregivers, people with disabilities. And sometimes there may be an extended partnership, an ongoing relationship, or just a one-off experience at the museum or at sites around the city, or even online. So the longest standing program that we offer people with dementia and their care partners is Medscapes. It began in 2008. And this program happens once or twice a month. We either take people in small groups into the galleries. This is people with dementia together with their care partners, look at art together, talk about it. They're multisensory opportunities for connecting with each other, with materials, works of art. Then we also have some art making opportunities too. The top two images here represent some art making, and in the top left, there's music. We had a jazz trio come and we were making art to the music, and then the musicians actually used the artwork as a kind of visual score and played the artwork. So there was a lot of back and forth, familiar songs, improvisation, both in the visual art making and in the music. So we're constantly thinking of ways to kind of connect with other arts as well, and have a nice time. Another offering that we began offering virtually, and we're still doing every other month virtually, is our virtual Memory Cafe. And we began the virtual Memory Cafe during the pandemic, shortly after lockdown, we began in April 2020. And really it's an opportunity to connect, to look at art together online, to share stories. We have a theme for each one. We begin with works of art to kind of introduce a theme, but we really like to get people communicating across, with each other, and share their stories, dress up, share photographs, family pictures, recipes, really get people talking with each other online. And then we've recently introduced an in-person Memory Cafe, and this is taking place on the first Monday of every other month. The next one will be in December, and then subsequently February, April, June. And the alternate months is when we offer the Memory Cafe virtually. And with these Memory Cafes, it's a much less formal, more informal opportunity to engage with art, to socialize with each other in the museum than the Memory or than Medscapes, which involves a more formal tour or art making activity. Here we're kind of setting the scene for conversations, for we have these art cards with images of works of art on one side and kind of prompts to get people looking together, discussing, talking about the works of art and how they might connect to their own lives. So we have those at the tables. We have refreshments, seasonal refreshments for people to enjoy, their games and puzzles. We have always a musical playlist. There's art making activities, but just materials there for people to use as they wish. They don't have to. There isn't a kind of guided experience. Here we have some participants playing cards with our intern from last year, and just generally having fun. These programs are, these cafes are hosted really by a team of volunteers who are themselves older adults. It's really just a kind of ever evolving, very much participant-led experience in the museum. We give people passes to return, or we give them tickets on the day to stay in the museum, encourage people to visit. And then another offering that is specifically for caregivers of people with dementia, that we're actually having the first gathering of this support group tomorrow. And this is a joint project, a collaboration between the Met and Arts and Minds, which is another organization working with people with memory loss and care partners. So together we're offering at the Met this monthly program for caregivers specifically. It's Thursday mornings, and I've put the dates for each meeting here for the fall. Arts and Minds are taking registration for this program. So to register or to get more information about that, you can email info@artsandminds.org, or you can contact the Met to find out more, and I'll have our contact information up in a sec. And finally, Your Met Art Box, which is a resource kit really for older adults more generally, whether they have memory loss or not. This is a kit of those art cards that I mentioned, showing works of art on the same theme, 4 works of art on one theme, art making materials with suggested activities, free passes to visit the museum. We've distributed these. We did one initiative where we distributed them to older adults who couldn't leave their homes, who were receiving meal services, so they could use them on their own, together with family and friends, or with friendly visiting volunteers. And this is just an example of some of the kinds of works of art. These are 4 works of art from different cultures, different types of art, on the theme of games. We're currently distributing these to older adult centers. We have a group of older adult centers, and group activities are being facilitated using these kits, using these art cards, and the materials that are included. And this is just an example of the kinds of prompts that we're giving people to facilitate anyone, to have a conversation around art. You don't have to know anything about it. The first one is really just a prompt to look closely at this object and talk about it, what you see, and, free associate. And then maybe the next one, you're thinking about connections that you might make between this work of art and objects in your home, or objects or experiences really in your own life. And then there's an art making activity or a writing activity included as well. So we're constantly thinking about new ways, added ways that we can use those resources to reach other older adults and their caregivers, so that to have kind of meaningful experiences around works of art together. And just contact information for us here, access@metmuseum.org is our email. The phone number is here as well. We would love to hear from individuals and organizations about your interests, your needs, and we're happy to share opportunities for older adults and care partners at our various programs.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, everyone. I have learned so much today. I'm going to invite everybody to come back on screen with their faces and their voices. Mark, I will tell you right away, I've been busy on my Apple phone ever since you've been talking, exploring the options that I had no idea were on it. So I'm very excited about new technology opportunities. I will go online and look at more, but you know, you don't even have to necessarily be a caregiver or having any issues to realize so many of these things are incredibly handy, and why wouldn't I have ever thought to look at them? So thank you. Thank you all. Really, it was so informative. All right, so just we didn't have that many questions, so it's fine with me that we're getting to the question part a bit late. I do want to, though, a couple of things that came up that I'm not sure anyone will have the answers for right now. But we know that there's a program within Medicaid for caregivers where a family member can actually receive pay for caring for someone. Is there a program like that within the Medicare program as well? I suspect, I don't think there is. Now, Laura, you're talking, but you're
So sorry.
Okay.
Yes, so there is not currently such a program under Medicare. And yeah, that is something that took a while to develop within New York State, but it is throughout New York State through the Medicaid program, consumer directed program, CDPAP.
right. That's what I thought. Thank you. And so one thing I'll say about today is, so I was being caretaker, I guess, between 7 years ago and 5 years ago when my parents both passed. There are so many more programs now, just a handful of years later. That didn't exist then, and it is actually so exciting to learn about these. But one of the questions is, are there any kind of senior daycare programs that happen at night that can help give caretakers a sleep break? I guess more likely these would be online programs than in person, but are there actual day programs that are quote unquote at night that people go to? I don't think I'd heard of one.
Yeah, so I will say, I know New Jewish Home, where I previously worked, did have for a while a nighttime day center, which was a wonderful program, but I don't think that they are doing that in the evening now. And that was just for the Medicaid population.
Okay. Sorry, whoever asked that one. Jumping some of the other questions that, I want to remind everyone, you can still type in questions if you're on Zoom. Or Facebook Live, and if we have time, I will get them and we'll try to get to them. A couple of the questions that came in advance. There's a similar question to yesterday's event. Can anyone recommend a law firm who has a lawyer who specializes in elder care? And we don't, as an office, refer people to individual lawyers. We will tell you that there is the New York City Bar Association has a lawyer referral service. I believe there's also a bar association specifically for elder law experts. But speaking for my office, we don't feel that we are allowed to recommend anyone specifically to be hired. But I know that there are some excellent elder law specialists. And this question was specific because her husband was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Yes, indeed, they need to make sure they have all kinds of paperwork updated so that she can represent the best interests of her husband and herself.
Sure.
So just to
Yes.
follow up with that question,
Yes.
Caring Kind does host
And
a
then
legal and financial Medicaid home care seminars every month by elder care attorneys. And we do have a list
yes,
of
it's
suggestive
8,
firms to
6.
reach out to. So we'll just give them like 5 people that they could reach out to, elder care attorneys that they could choose and compare.
What about this?
Thank you. Somebody has to mute, I think, because there's someone talking behind them. Sorry about that. Let's see. There's a question about buying long-term care insurance to pay for a loved one's care. I will give my 2 cents and then let anyone else jump in. The model for long-term care insurance really has not worked very well. There's only about 2 companies left in the state who sell it. It's extraordinarily expensive unless you're buying it way before you need it. You know, if you're in your 50s and you're evaluating financial planning for your future, maybe there's still a long-term insurance plan that makes sense, but they have many fewer benefits than they used to, and their costs have been going up significantly. So I always warn people to be very, very cautious about that kind of insurance. But saving for the future in a more traditional manner and putting money away that you know you're going to use for healthcare costs that aren't going to be covered for insurance, that's good planning for your future. I don't know if anybody else wants to throw in their opinion on long-term insurance now.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I had heard most recently. I just spoke with an insurance broker who said, yeah, if you're in your 40s, maybe your early 50s, but beyond that, it's not really going to make much sense to look at those policies.
Because one of the things that had happened was really starting about 10 years ago, people had been paying in for decades, and then the insurance companies all decided at the same time to do 70% increases in 1 year. With the expectation, people would say, I can't afford that. And they couldn't. And the insurance companies would go, well, so we can close down your, we can end your policy. So people had paid in for enormous numbers of years. And then literally just as they were getting to the age where they would need this, their insurance companies were backing out of the deal and actually literally had broken off from other insurance companies. So there wasn't liability for any of the big insurance companies. And it didn't just happen here in New York. It was a national phenomena. So there's not even a good place where you can buy long-term care insurance at this point. There aren't any good states. So it's very, very frustrating. Okay. Are there programs for very elderly people who are cognitively intact? I think a lot of the programs you described today actually would be very valuable and effective for non-cognitively impaired people as well as cognitively impaired people. Yes, sorry, Robin has her hand up.
I do. And if you're able to attend, I would recommend, depending on what part of the city you live in the 92nd Street Y or the JCC, these are both institutions that go deep into programming for adults of all ages. If you need to have it online, another alternative might be Dorot. So I think we have your bases covered, I hope.
And we also have a large number of just senior centers throughout the city of New York. I know I have some excellent ones in my own district that offer all kinds of different kinds of programming. Of course, they also offer meals, which can be very important for the health of seniors, and caregivers are welcome to come with them. It's not like you have to leave mom at the door and then not be able to go in. That is not the experience of the senior center world. So some of the senior centers have incredibly diverse programming. I don't know whether one that was one of my favorites, but there was one center that had a belly dancing program. I think with the oldest belly dancer being 92. So, I think there's a lot of diversity in our senior centers, and just the number of things you've all talked about today could keep somebody busy 7 days a week, let's be honest. And specific programs for people who are visually impaired or hard of hearing or using a walker. Again, that's almost everybody once you get past 65, I have to say. So again, I don't know if anybody talks specifically about programs for hearing impaired or visually impaired. I think the Lighthouse, which is on the Upper West Side, does have a number of programs specifically for the visually impaired. Anybody else have a? Yes.
This is Rebecca from the Metropolitan Museum.
Yes.
We have programs and also opportunities like what we call verbal imaging tours, which are descriptive tours that can be booked by individuals or small groups, families, to where a trained educator will guide you through the museum, wherever you want to go, and describe works of art in detail. So specifically for people who can't see or can't see very well. We also have assistive listening devices for any program. So anyone with hearing loss, you can get an assistive listening device with headset or a neck loop to hear a presentation or participate in a tour more easily. And I would I guess just more generally to the question about older adults in general who are, don't have any memory loss. All of those kinds of accommodations are available. Wheelchairs are available to borrow at the Met and at many museums around the city. You can just go and visit, be there at, go at your own pace or participate in a program. But make sure to look out for those kinds of accommodations to make the experience more accessible and more comfortable for older adults.
And Mark, you also have your hand up.
Yes, Senator, and the Lighthouse for the Guild, they have an assessment team for tech now as well. They've put that all back together again, which is wonderful. But also the local libraries. The New York Public Library just had a huge conference this past weekend on vision supports and vision services with regards to technology. So if you ever want to go to the local library, mainly the main branch, but also the, Heckscher down on, I think, 23rd Street. They're specifically for people with physical disabilities and people with vision. So I know a lot of older adults want to keep reading and participating and learning. So those tools are available.
Great. And I know we did another webinar and we probably can make it accessible. Anybody who's interested can check with Wendy from my staff after today, that we did one specifically around hearing issues for older New Yorkers and available services and newer technology. So that's also where really the technology advances are giving us all so many new tools that we didn't even realize that we could have in just a few years ago. So thank you both for that. So somebody's asking about how do you support another senior who may be dying or their relative may be dying. And that we've also done a number of webinars on, and I'm going to make sure that we can sort of put them back up to make sure people can get them and listen to them, because it's extremely important to understand the options with hospice care and palliative care, and hospice options. Actually, Mount Sinai was really one of the leaders in early palliative care and hospice programs and still is. So I don't know if Elizabeth wants to say anything about that, but I used hospice care for my own parents when they were living at home but passing, and the number of supports that you could get is really quite phenomenal. Elizabeth?
I agree with you 100%, Doctor. It's true. Also, VNS Services has a hospice program, and number of other organizations.
Yeah, VNS, MJHS,
Right.
Calvary, and they provide further home care hours as well. That is one of the benefits. I just heard that New York is one of the lower utilization rates of hospice care, which is really unfortunate because it's an excellent benefit.
I'm always amazed that we're so low on the list because there are tremendous services available, and basically everyone's eligible because it's through the Medicare program. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, I didn't want to.
I was just going to say every hospital too has had doctors trained to work in palliative care and special services and specialists to help any family member care and provide that kind of added support to their family and the person themselves.
I know when my parents were in a hospice program at home, the favorite service offered, someone who came and played guitar and sang, not just with my parents, but with the grandchildren and great grandchildren who'd come to visit. And suddenly there'd be a party going on when instead it was, perhaps their last visit with their grandparents and great grandparents, which could be enormously depressing also for children, right? To deal with death and dying. And instead it became like this festive party because we were all singing with the woman and her guitar. And it was pretty amazing, I have to say. So I'm a big fan of preaching about the options in hospice care for people who don't know enough about that option for themselves or loved ones in their family. Let's see where I lost my questions. 1 second. Okay. Mental illness is prevalent among caregivers. So there were a number of programs that are supporting actually the caregivers. Do you all, and you talked about it, several of you, do we think that's a growing issue or that's just a fact for so many caregivers at this point?
I think it's fact. And as the caregiving numbers grow, I think that too in turn keeps growing, unfortunately. So being aware and self-aware of your needs and how to get the help you need and where to get it is really important to help you be the best kind of caregiver you can be for your families and friends.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, let's see. I'm just double checking. Can someone recommend how they find a Medicaid advisor? I don't know whether that's to try to get on Medicaid if they think they're eligible, in which case I would recommend the navigators at the Community Service Society, who, and we'll probably be able to put the phone number, contact information up, where they review your eligibility for different kinds of insurance and what actually might be the best option, even if you're a private pay insurance participant, the programs that perhaps match best what you need. I think the New York City Department for the Aging also still has their program that also helps seniors in particular evaluate insurance options, and I think does initial Medicaid reviews as well for senior citizens. So with any luck, we'll get that information into the chat quickly, or you can follow up with my office to get that information. Oh, and I should mention my office is very proud of the fact that every 2 years we update our senior resource guide, and we just keep putting more and more information in it about resources and how you find out things as a senior in New York City. I suspect we have even more information to put out about all of your agencies and the new things that you're doing that will go into our updated senior resource guide. And people are able to get copies of the guide once it's available. We'll let everybody know through the same email lists that told you about this event. We'll make large numbers of copies available at sites where seniors go, and there's never any charge. And we'll also have it available as an online publication, although it's gotten to be frighteningly thick, so I'm not sure it works as well as an online publication, although some of us are faster at computer than we are at books nowadays. So that will be available soon, also the updated version. And with that, we've actually hit sort of the time mark. So I am going to thank all of you profusely, Elizabeth, Laura, Dante, Mark, Kate, Robin, and Rebecca. We always used to worry, could we put this many people on one web event? But the answer is yes, it's perfect to have so many of you bringing different contributions to this discussion. So really thank you, and thank your organizations for the work you do every day. I'm hoping that as many of you as possible could be able to join us tomorrow for a completely different set of guests and topics, 2 o'clock to 3:30. our final session of our 3-session senior resource fair online, and that will be about nature and the environment. And unfortunately, some of the scary things going on around us that we also need to be thinking through, addressing, and you are literally never too old to be addressing the future of the planet. So come on back tomorrow afternoon. And then I want to remind anyone that we're actually going to hold our first live event since March 2020, next Tuesday, October 31st. Some people call it Halloween. I call it my first live town hall at Carnegie Hall. I'm going to make it to the stage of Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice. From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We're going to have guests speaking about key policy issues and the 2024 legislative issues in front of me. The RSVP link for this event is listed in the chat, and seating is limited. So if you've signed up but know you can't attend, please let us know so we can free your seat for someone else, because apparently we already have a waiting list. So again, thank you so much all for joining us this afternoon, all my special guests, my staff. Remember, stay safe, mask up in indoor public spaces, and keep washing your hands, because that's apparently also a very good way to avoid catching all of these diseases we are dealing with right now. So thank you again. Take care.
Bye-bye.